Welcome back to That Dad Guy. It's October 16th, 2025. It's about 14 degrees and raining outside currently, and we are once again looking at my father's stamp collection. We are going through this album. This is the Americas, Everything But Canada and the US that my father had put together. We're getting near the end. We're down in here somewhere, and so what we've been doing is going alphabetically through all of these countries, and then I've been giving you a little bit of history, and then I'm showing you the stamps that are in here, plus any stamps that I might have collected as well that aren't in this album. And so sometimes the history is the longest part of the video because sometimes he has very few stamps from those countries. But that's okay. I'm just giving you a snapshot of what stamps are out there for you to potentially collect. If you haven't heard about these countries, these places, I'm giving you a little bit of their history too. Now, a lot of them have a very similar history because of colonization in this area. You talk about the indigenous people that were there first, and then the European countries that have come in and colonized. Slavery was brought in as well. Their rises to independence and free statehood, and then the economies that they have had and currently have. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to touch on this country, and I'll talk a little bit about the history. Then we'll show you some stamps. Sounds like a good idea. Make sure you like, you subscribe, you leave positive comments, you share with other people, you hype it if you can, and yeah, put on the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of the videos that I'm putting out, because I talk about a lot of different things. Sometimes stamps, sometimes postcards, sometimes Lego, sometimes travel, sometimes cars, a variety of things that I'm into and that I'm trying to show you that come from my area of the world. Maybe you've never been to the Maritimes before, or New Brunswick, or Moncton. Well, now's your chance to get a glimpse of what's happening here, and that includes some of the local restaurants that I get to go to sometimes with my sister, and so there's a variety of things. But if you're interested in stamps, today's your lucky day, because today's a stamp video, and we're talking about St Lucia. St Lucia, it's normal, its language is English, but there is some French to be found on there, and I'll tell you why in a minute. The population of the whole island is about 180,000 people. The first people that were there, speaking of people, were the Arawak people, and they'd been there since about 400 BC. But when the Europeans arrived, 1502, the Spanish said, yeah, we think we saw that island. That was kind of the definitiveness of Christopher Columbus, that he staked claim to the whole region and claimed, yeah, I saw that one. We're going to stake claim to that to Spain. But 1550, French pirate Jean Dubois, or Wooden Leg, was also in the area, and he kind of used Pigeon Island as his place where he docked and where he kept his goods. In 1605, the first British settlement was found on St. Lucia as well, because there was a boat heading to Guyana, and it got blown off course, and the 67 people that were on that ship ended up going to the island, setting up a settlement, and then locals didn't like them being there, so they had to flee because they were being killed off on a regular basis. French came back. They had problems with the natives. 1650, they kind of set up a fort there. By 1660, they had peace truce with the natives. 1663, the English came along and took control of it, and it went that way back and forth for about 14 times between the English and the French, because it was part of that island chain. The first place that you might see if you were getting to Central and South America. So these islands were very important all the way up to Jamaica. They were riddled with pirates, for one, because different nations were encouraging piracy on their competitors' merchant ships. The Spanish were taking lots of natural resources out of this area and trying to get them back to Europe. And so the competitors, like England and France and Portugal and the Dutch, were all there trying to get their little piece of the pie. And so St. Lucia was one of those key spots along the way that disrupted trade or protected trade, depending on what ships were going through. And so back and forth the English and the French went with having control of this island, all the way up until 1814, when the English finally had full control of it, and it never went anywhere after that. It's part of the British Windward Islands, and it was known as Helen of the West, because after Helen of Troy of Greek mythology, she was so sought after, just like the most beautiful woman in the world through Greek mythology, so they called St. Lucia Helen of the West. Now, it was a slave-based sugar economy that was there, and right up until slavery was abolished in 1834. Now, one of the tricky things that they've done, and you kind of hear this in today's politics sometimes too, is that slavery was abolished, but it took 4 years for slaves to be free. They felt that they had to adapt to a freedom through an apprenticeship, and so they had to continue to work for their masters at 3/4 of the work week to try to learn how to be free. Sounds like a terrible idea, and I'm sure the slaves knew how to be free by the time that they were set free in 1834, but they weren't given their full freedom until 1838, which I guess gave the businesses chances to adapt, maybe move out of the country altogether. And so by the time 1838 came around, the black community, the Aboriginal people that were still left, they were the majority. The white Europeans were definitely a minority, and they were kind of leaving the island at that time too. By 1924, they got their first government representation, so they got their own free elections under the British government. They were sucked into the Second World War. 2 British ships were sunk in the harbor of the capital in 1942 by German U-boats. They provided soldiers to go overseas and fight. So when we think of World War II, other than maybe Pearl Harbor, we kind of sometimes forget that German U-boats and Allied forces had skirmishes and war, and people lost their lives in other areas other than in the Pacific and in Europe directly. The Atlantic Ocean and the countries that bordered the Atlantic on the eastern seaboard were also affected by World War II. And so St. Lucia had their share of conflicts as well there as a result. In 1979, they got their peaceful independence. They decided they would remain within the British Commonwealth, just like Canada has. So King Charles III still remains their king, but they have independence now. And in 1982, after a whole bunch of tornadoes hurricanes had come through and wiped out a lot of their infrastructure on the island. They went away from a sugar-based economy to a banana-based economy. By the 2000s, though, they have switched from bananas to be more about tourism and banking. So that's the little bit of history about St. Lucia. It, like many of the countries I've talked to about in the past, in the Americas, have had their economies affected by hurricanes. Their population was affected by slavery in the early goings. The original people that were there were decimated by diseases brought on by the Europeans and their way of life that they brought with them in order to colonize. And St. Lucia was another one of those countries that had a similar fate along the way. But let's not talk about that anymore. Let's move into their postal history, show you some of the stamps that my father was able to collect, and a few that I was able to attach as well to it. So here we go. I sometimes wish the postal history with stamps was longer, and so we could have seen maybe the French influence on these stamps as too, if we'd gone back a little bit further. But here you can see the British influence. There's a bit of the French influence there with the fleur-de-lis. If you go there, you can also get a bit of the Creole language there. People's last names, you're going to still see the influence of the French people that were once there. But it is a mix between the French and the English. You can see an overprint. So there are the few that my father has. Let me show you the other ones. These ones are really nice with Queen Elizabeth II on them. A very regal-looking definitive stamp. I guess we'll follow that George stamp. There's a couple of repeat stamps that I noticed that were in my father's collection that are here as well. red ensign. Of course, some more scouting stamps in there too, as we've seen a lot throughout the Caribbean. Coins on stamps, always very popular. Oh, and of course, planes on stamps. If you know what, I don't know why I say oh of course, because this month is Stamp of the Month and my theme are planes on stamps. So if you want a chance to win lots of planes on stamps, you have to go to the Stamp of the Month video, put in the keyword that I've asked you to in that video comment of that video and that video alone. So there's their plug for Stamp of the Month if you haven't watched that one already. As you can tell, we're getting near the end of the alphabet. There still are a few countries that remain. Some of them have lots of stamps. Some of them have few stamps within my father's collection. I will show you what's there. And I've been going to stamp shows and trying to bolster the collection a little bit. Not always the easiest thing to do with some of these countries because it's harder to find some of these countries' stamps. But you might have more luck where you are. So if you're interested in stamp collecting, if you're interested in these areas, maybe you've got a new fascination now based on these videos, maybe you'll have more luck finding other stamps to go with it. And that being said, there are lots of places that you can go looking for stamps. You can go on eBay, you can go on HipStamp, you can go on a variety of different websites that trade and sell stamps. You can go to your local stamp shows if you have them, or stamp shops if you even have those. And they're not all that expensive to get a lot of these stamps. So it's possible to get a nice little collection going of stamps. That's my little plug, as I always do, trying to encourage people to get out there and collect stamps. It's a great way to keep the history alive, to learn a little bit about a region that maybe you're not all that familiar with otherwise. And it's just a lot of fun. It's not really an expensive hobby unless you make it an expensive hobby. If you're looking for just the rare or the unusual, they may cost you a bit more. All right, well, that being said, that's it for today. Next week, we'll have another country to touch on, and tomorrow, I'm going to have mail to show you because we're back at work at Canada Post, and mail is flowing, so I've got stuff that has come in. We'll also have, hopefully, Steve's Limerick and Mindy's Joke of the Day, maybe even an extra joke in there as well. So who knows? Stay tuned, tune in, and you'll see what happens. All right, have a magical week. Like, follow? You say like, subscribe, share, and tell all your friends.
Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy?
Bye. It's a short mail week with Monday being Thanksgiving, but already all of this has come in. Who knows what will come in tomorrow, but I'll show you it in detail tomorrow.